What if the most expensive mistake you could make in a circular tiny home had nothing to do with your walls, your windows, or your roof? What if it happened behind them? Most people building an O-shaped or round tiny home obsess over the aesthetics. The curved walls, the panoramic feel, the way light wraps around the interior. And fair enough, that stuff is genuinely beautiful. But here's the thing almost nobody talks about. When your floor plan is a circle, your plumbing either works with that geometry or it fights it. And when it fights it, you lose. You lose money on wasted hot water. You lose space to redundant utility runs. You lose time chasing leaks across a layout that was never designed to be serviced. Today we're going to fix that. I'm going to walk you through exactly how zero-waste O-shaped plumbing works, what a centralized utility hub actually looks like inside a circular design, and the specific decisions that separate a tight, efficient, low-waste system from a costly spaghetti mess hidden behind your beautiful curved walls. And I am saving the most overlooked detail for the end of this video. It is something almost every circular tiny home builder gets wrong on the first build, and it can cost you hundreds of dollars a year in wasted water alone. So stay with me. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel is called Affordable Tiny Homes. We do not do hype. We do not inflate numbers. We research things, we verify things, and we give you the honest picture so you can make smart decisions. If that sounds like your kind of content, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss what we put out next. Alright, let us build a better plumbing system. Let's start with the problem, because you cannot solve something you have not clearly defined. In a standard rectangular tiny home, plumbing is relatively predictable. You stack your wet rooms. Kitchen here, bathroom directly behind it. Your supply lines run straight. Your drain lines slope toward one exit point. It is boring, but it is efficient. Now curve that layout into an O shape. Suddenly your kitchen might be on one arc, your bathroom on another, and the mechanical room could theoretically end up anywhere on the ring. If you just drop those wet zones wherever they look good on a round floor plan, your pipe runs can become surprisingly long for such a small structure. And that matters. According to the U.S. Department of Energy's Building America program, in a traditionally laid-out home of just 1,200 square feet, the volume of water sitting in supply lines between the water heater and the furthest fixture can exceed 1.5 gallons. The wait for hot water at that distant faucet can stretch past 90 seconds. Every second you are running that tap waiting for hot water, you are flushing cold water straight down the drain. In a 400 square foot tiny home with a bad layout, the same problem scales down in space, but not necessarily in waste. The solution that actually works is called a centralized utility core. And in an O-shaped design, that core is not just a convenience. It is the single most important structural and systems decision you will make. A centralized utility hub is exactly what it sounds like. It is a single concentrated zone in your home where all of your primary utility systems live together. Water heater, electrical panel, plumbing manifold, HVAC if you have one, and water filtration if applicable. All of it in one accessible, compact location. In a rectangular home, that core is usually a closet or mechanical room against one wall. In an O-shaped or circular design, you have two viable options, and which one you choose will define the performance of your plumbing for the life of the home. Option 1 is a true center core. This means the utility hub sits in the geometric center of the ring, and all wet zones around the perimeter of the O radiate outward from that central point. Kitchen at 9 o'clock on the ring, bathroom at 3 o'clock, laundry at 6 o'clock. Each one is equidistant from the core. Your hot water runs are short, roughly equal in length, and predictable. Option 2 is an arc cluster. This means you group all your wet zones together on one section of the ring, maybe a quarter to a third of the circle, and you place your utility hub inside that arc. The rest of the ring is dry space. Living area, sleeping area, storage. This approach can be more practical in smaller O-shaped designs where a true center core takes up usable interior space you cannot afford to lose. The Building America Solution Center documents both approaches under what they call core plumbing layout strategy. Their guidance is clear. The key principle is to determine the maximum allowable volume of water that can run down the drain before hot water arrives at a fixture. Then work backwards to design your floor plan around that constraint. Not the other way around. You design the systems first, then you wrap the aesthetics around them. That is a mindset shift for most people, but it is the right one. Zero-waste plumbing in an O-shape rests on 3 pillars. Get all 3 right and your system is tight, efficient, and genuinely sustainable. Miss one, and you're just doing regular plumbing in a roundhouse. Pillar 1. The manifold system. A central manifold is the physical brain of a zero-waste plumbing setup. Rather than branching your supply lines outward from a main trunk in a traditional tree pattern, a manifold sends individual dedicated runs directly from a single point to each fixture. Your kitchen cold supply has its own line from the manifold. Your shower hot supply has its own line. Each one is independent. The advantages are significant. You can shut off any single fixture without affecting the rest of the house. Leaks are isolated. Maintenance is straightforward. And because each run from a PX manifold is a continuous single piece of tubing with no joints inside the walls, your leak risk inside the structure drops dramatically. In a circular design, a manifold installed at your central utility hub creates a spoke-in-wheel geometry. The hub is the center. Each fixture on the perimeter is a spoke. That geometry is actually ideal for an O-shape because it mirrors the physical form of the home. PX tubing is the standard material choice here and has been for over a decade in tiny home builds. It is flexible enough to navigate curved wall cavities without fittings. It does not corrode. And according to current build data, the core components for a dedicated PX manifold system typically run between $500 and $1,500 in materials, with DIY installation capable of cutting total plumbing labor costs by up to 50% where local codes permit. Pillar 2. Tankless on-demand hot water. If you have a storage tank water heater in a tiny home, you are paying to keep water hot 24 hours a day, whether you use it or not. That standby heat loss is pure waste. In a zero-waste system, it has no place. Tankless on-demand water heaters heat water only when a fixture calls for it. In a compact circular design with short pipe runs from a central utility hub, the performance advantage is amplified because the hot water reaches the fixture faster. According to 2026 data from Angie, tankless unit costs range from about $200 to $2,000, depending on capacity, with installation materials adding $130 to $280, plus roughly $10 per linear foot for piping and insulation. Electric tankless units hit efficiency ratings around 98%. Gas units run between 80 and 85%. The Department of Energy also notes that Energy Star certified tankless units can qualify for a 30% federal tax credit up to $600 under the Inflation Reduction Act, assuming your tiny home is classified as your primary residence, which meaningfully offsets the upfront cost. For a tiny home with a well-designed centralized utility hub, a properly sized electric tankless unit is almost always the cleanest, most space-efficient choice. Pillar 3. Greywater recovery. This is where zero-waste plumbing stops being a buzzword and starts being a real, measurable system. Greywater is all the wastewater that exits your home that is not from the toilet. Sink water, shower water, laundry water. In a conventional setup, all of that goes straight to the sewer or septic and is simply gone. In a zero-waste system, that water gets captured, filtered, and put back to work. The numbers here are compelling. A real-world case study documented in 2024 in Oakland, California, showed a combined rainwater and greywater system cutting household daily water use from 124 gallons to just 39 gallons per day. That is a 68% reduction. Research from the Energy and Environmental Building Alliance puts potential annual water savings at over 18,700 gallons for a family of 3 using a greywater recycling device. For a single person or couple in a tiny home, the scale is smaller, but the percentages hold. A greywater system in a tiny home can realistically reduce daily water consumption from around 33 gallons per person down to roughly 21 gallons per person. That is meaningful, especially in areas with water restrictions or high utility rates. What does it cost? According to 2026 analysis, greywater systems for residential use range from about $1,000 on the low end for a simple laundry-to-landscape diverter, up to $20,000 for a fully automated, multi-source treatment system. For most tiny home applications, a mid-range compact system in the $1,500 to $5,000 range is realistic. Ongoing maintenance is modest, typically $50 to $150 per year for filter cleaning and minor upkeep. In an O-shaped design, greywater recovery integrates naturally into the centralized utility hub. Your drain lines from the perimeter wet zones route inward to the hub, where the greywater filter and holding components live. Treated water then routes outward again for toilet flushing or exterior irrigation. The circular geometry actually makes this easier than in a rectangular layout where drain lines have to travel across the full footprint. We have talked about supplying water in greywater. Now we need to address the part of the waste conversation most people find uncomfortable to discuss directly. In a fully zero-waste O-shaped design, the cleanest solution for toilet waste is a composting toilet. This is not a radical fringe idea. It is a well-documented, widely available technology that eliminates black water entirely. A composting toilet requires no water to operate, no flush supply line, no black water drain, no septic connection for that fixture. It reduces the complexity of your plumbing system significantly, which in a circular design means one less system to route through curved walls. The practical numbers: a family of 4 switching from a conventional flush toilet to a composting system can save approximately 15,000 gallons of water annually. Annual maintenance costs for a composting toilet run around $20 to $40, compared to potential septic inspection costs of $300 to $1,000. A quality unit requires emptying every 4 to 6 weeks for 2 full-time users. The 2026 market has a solid range of options. Self-contained units work well for smaller O-shaped builds. Split systems, where the composting chamber is located below the toilet in a crawl space or utility area, are worth considering if your circular design has the vertical clearance. The key spec to look for is urine diversion, which reduces the frequency of maintenance by around 50%. One honest note here: composting toilets are regulated differently by state and county. Some jurisdictions require a conventional backup system or have specific installation requirements. Always verify your local codes before committing to this as your only waste solution. Let's get specific about what the centralized utility hub actually looks like as a physical space. In a center core O-shape, the hub is typically a cylindrical or square column in the middle of the floor plan, roughly 30 to 50 square feet. That sounds like a lot in a tiny home, but consider what it contains: your tankless water heater mounted to the wall, your PX manifold with labeled shutoff for each fixture, your electrical panel, your greywater filter unit, your water filtration system, if applicable, and your connections for incoming supply and outgoing drain. When all of those components live in one location, you get something that sounds simple, but is actually transformative. You can walk to one spot in your home and shut off, inspect, or service every utility system without crawling into walls, cabinets, or under the floor. In an arc cluster design, that same collection of components lives against the inner wall of the wet arc. The hub is not a freestanding column, but rather a dedicated mechanical section of the ring wall, maybe 6 to 8 linear feet of it. The principle is identical. All your systems, one location. Design recommendations based on current best practices in 2026 include labeling every manifold port clearly at installation, leaving a minimum 24-inch clear working space around the tankless heater, installing an isolation ball valve on every supply line at the manifold, using a recirculation pump if your hot water runs exceed 10 feet from heater to fixture, and routing all greywater drain lines at a minimum 1/4 inch per foot slope toward the hub regardless of the curve they have to. Navigate. That last point is non-negotiable. Drain lines need gravity. Your artistic circular floor plan does not get to override physics. Remember, wrapping a slope pipe along a curved outer wall means a longer distance traveled, which means you need more vertical drop than if you run it straight to a center core. Plan for that clearance before you pour your slab or set your subfloor. Alright, I told you at the top of this video, I was saving the most overlooked detail for the end. Here it is. The single biggest mistake builders make in circular tiny homes is treating the vent stack as an afterthought. Every drain line in your plumbing system needs air behind it to flow properly. That air comes through vent pipes that rise from the drain, pass through the wall, and exit through the roof. In a rectangular home with a simple floor plan, vent routing is straightforward. In a circular home with a center utility hub, those vents have to travel from the perimeter wet zones inward to the hub, and then up through whatever structure sits above it. If you design the circular floor plan first and try to retrofit the vent routes later, You'll find yourself either punching through structural curved walls at awkward angles, running vents externally where they are visible and exposed to weather, or using air admittance valves in places where code does not permit them. The correct approach is to design your vent pathways before you finalize your wall system. In a center core design, the central column is the ideal vent chase. All fixture vents connect into the column and rise together through a single penetration in the roof. Clean, hidden, compliant. In an arc cluster design, plan a dedicated vent chase inside the wet arc's inner wall. It does not need to be large, but it needs to exist in the design from the beginning, not be shoehorned in after framing. This is the detail that separates a plumbing system that passes inspection on the first visit from one that requires a redesign mid-build. It is free to plan correctly. It is expensive to fix after the fact. Let us put some real numbers on this, so you know what you are actually building toward. A conventional tiny home with a storage tank, water heater, full flush toilet, no greywater recovery, and a traditional branch plumbing layout uses roughly 30 to 50 gallons of water per person per day, depending on habits and fixture efficiency. A zero-waste O-shaped system with a tankless heater, composting toilet, centralized manifold, and greywater recovery can realistically reduce that to 15 to 22 gallons per person per day. That reduction comes from multiple stack savings. Shorter hot water wait times mean less cold water dumped. Greywater recycling cuts fresh water demand for toilet and irrigation use, and the composting toilet eliminates flush water entirely. On greywater systems, specifically, 2026 analysis from Hello Water documents potential water bill savings of 30 to 50% annually. Some municipalities offer rebates to offset installation costs. Sunnyvale, California, for example, currently offers up to $3,000 for qualifying greywater irrigation connections. On energy for hot water, switching from a tank heater to a tankless on-demand unit typically reduces hot water energy consumption by 20 to 30%. For a tiny home where hot water is one of the largest energy loads, that matters. None of these numbers are dramatic individually, but they stack, and they compound over years of ownership. A zero-waste system in a circular tiny home is not a luxury build upgrade. It is a long-term operating cost decision. Before I close out, here is a fast checklist for anyone planning a zero-waste O-shape build right now. First, decide between center core and arc cluster layout before you finalize your floor plan. This is a day 1 design decision, not a day 61. Second, specify PX with a central manifold. Label every port at installation. Install isolation valves on each line. Third, choose a tankless on-demand water heater size for your fixture count and flow rate. Electric is usually the cleanest choice for a solar-integrated circular tiny home. Fourth, plan your greywater system from the beginning. Decide whether you're doing a simple laundry diversion, a full shower and sink capture system, or something in between. Route your drain lines accordingly from day 1. Fifth, evaluate composting toilet viability for your jurisdiction. If it is allowed and workable for your lifestyle, it simplifies your waste system dramatically. Sixth, design your vent routes before framing. Identify the vent chase early. Do not leave it for later. And seventh, locate your utility hub with serviceability as the primary criterion. Aesthetics of the floor plan comes second. You want to be able to open one door and access everything. That is zero-waste O-shape plumbing. Centralized hubs, manifold distribution, on-demand hot water, greywater recovery, and vent systems planned from the first sketch. None of it is complicated once you understand the geometry of the problem. The circle is not your enemy. It is actually a really good shape for centralized systems. You just have to build with that shape in mind from the start. If this was helpful, do me a favor and drop a comment below telling me which part of your circular tiny home build you're currently working through. I read every comment, and I use them to decide what topics to cover next. Subscriber questions have driven a lot of the most popular videos on this channel. I want to keep that going. If you are not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Hit that button. I put out new research-backed content on alternative housing regularly, and I would love to have you along for it. And if you want to go deeper on tiny home systems, I will put a card up right now, linking to our video on passive rainwater collection. It pairs directly with what we covered today. This is affordable tiny homes. Build smart.